Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
What is your name? Can you say your name for the camera?
Judy Shaffer.
And you're my grandmother.
Yes, I'm your grandma.
My dad's mom.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so can you tell me about your earliest childhood memory? Or your most significant childhood memory?
Okay. I think my grandmother was blind, and my earliest childhood memory was when she was rocking me in a rocking chair in she had an old farmhouse, and I just remember that being rocked. So I don't know, 3.5, 4, something like that.
Oh wow, yeah, that's early, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know anything else about like your grandmother? Like, do you remember a lot about her being blind?
Yeah, she was blind. Mostly I remember the stories from my mother. I do remember her being blind. I remember visiting her at the farm, and I remember my mother telling me that she could bake bread.
Oh, wow.
And she couldn't sew because she couldn't see to sew as they were, but she could cook. And I remember what she looked. I remember vaguely what she looked like.
Yeah.
She died when I was 5, and at the time, they had her in a bed, like a hospital bed with sides, and I, for the longest time, thought she was in a crib, and I didn't understand why she was in a crib, and I never asked anybody. But I was only 5, so to me that was a crib. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized, okay, she wasn't in a crib. It was a hospital bed.
Wow, that's
you
know, interesting.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah. I remember Mom talking about stories as she grew up. Now she wasn't blind all her life. She lost her eyesight probably, in her, I'm gonna say mid 40s, maybe something 40s to 50s. And at that point, they didn't know really why. And she died when she was only 64 years old. So, I do remember. I remember being there. I remember probably a little older, maybe closer to being 5. I remember we used to get in like a tire and roll down the hill. There was a hill right there, So I would have been older doing that. But my earliest memory is her rocking me in a rocking chair.
Wow.
3.5, 4,
crazy.
Something like that. Yeah.
So, what are your most vivid memories of going to school growing up? Maybe before high school. So.
Okay. I don't remember a lot about. I didn't have kindergarten. I started at 5. First grade, and I don't have a lot of memories of first, second, and third grade. I do remember really liking my first grade teacher and really liking her. I struggled with learning how to read. It seemed like everybody was like 6 and I was only 5, and I struggled keeping up at first, but once I caught on, then I was okay. Let's see. I had friends that were like 6 and I was only 5, so it was a big difference in ages. So I remember mostly 3rd, probably 4th and 5th grade. I remember we had 2 sections, and in 4th grade I remember this vividly. And they put like a piece of paper out on each outside of the door, and you look to see whose names are on that piece of paper, and it was clear that one was the smarter kids and one was not so smart kids, and I was terrified that I'd be in the, like, absolutely terrified. I remember like looking for my name, and like being so stressed out about it.
Yeah.
And I remember like, oh, I'm in the good class, not the bad class. I remember that, and I remember. First, second, and third grade, I went, or at least maybe first and second grade. I remember I had about maybe 10 blocks from school, and I would walk home from school to have lunch. I remember that. I didn't some people did eat in the cafeteria, but for some reason I went home to have lunch early. I remember that. I had a really good friend her name was Joni, and I remember at some point they moved away, you know, and I remember missing her. I remember that, yeah.
Do you have any other, like, good friends from probably before high school that you remember a lot? Or not a lot, just, like...
Yeah, yeah, actually, the funny thing, Joe's sister, my husband's sister, Pep-Pep's sister, is married to a boy that went to elementary school.
Really?
Jay Cessna, yeah.
Oh,
so
really?
we actually went to church and elementary school together.
Wow,
yeah.
that's
so
cool.
I do remember that. Yeah, I mean, I haven't, elementary school, you know, there was a couple girls that I, you know, are friends with, probably more so in high school, you know.
Yeah.
Had more friends like in high school. We actually went to elementary school to 6th grade.
Oh, really?
And it's funny, I vividly remember the last time I was on the playground in 6th grade.
Really?
I vividly remember that, and I remember thinking, this is the last time I'll be
Wow. That's so
in elementary
interesting.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, like, stuck in your mind.
Yeah. I was we did cursive
Yeah.
in 6th grade, and I have terrible handwriting skills. Terrible.
Well, you
And
passed that on to me.
did I? So I print everything I print, and I can remember my 6th grade teacher was just he liked me, but he just could not understand how I couldn't have these better. And he would get, like, he was still at the time where he would, like, if you were a left-handed person, they would still smack your hand, you know, that
really?
you weren't allowed to be
They
left-handed.
made you right.
Right. Now, I wasn't. I still couldn't write. It didn't matter. But I can remember a couple boys, I remember feeling bad.
Yeah.
Because I knew it wasn't right, you know,
Yeah.
but I, of course, didn't speak up or anything. But I remember thinking that's so unfair, because he would get mad at particularly 2 boys that were left-handed, but they couldn't.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so 6th grade, and then 7th grade through 12th grade went to high school. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in, like, photo albums you would hang out with a lot of the neighbors.
Yes.
Do you remember
Yes.
about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had a great childhood. I mean, as far as playing in the neighborhood, and you know, it was kind of like that whole block that we lived on. Everybody, like, played outside, and
that's nice.
Yeah. I can remember to a certain point where I could play football or baseball with the kids, but you got to a certain point, like maybe 3rd grade, where you couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, I can remember a friend that would make some kind of contraption that you'd ride in down the,
Oh, really?
like, race
that
car
must
or
have been a
whatever.
blast.
It was fun. Yeah. We had a lot of good times. Yeah.
So, if you could, would you go back and relive your teenage years?
I don't think so.
No. Why do you think no?
Well, I enjoyed them a lot. I mean, I think that's when I started kind of getting more confidence, you know. I was, you know, in more things, you know. I got into cheerleading, and got into, like, I think I was an usher for plays, and just in the yearbook, like, group, you know, and just got into different activities, and I really enjoyed it, and I started, I think, getting more confident and growing. But I think every season in your life you enjoy and learn, and so I don't really, it was a good time, you know. I think the hardest time for me was, like, 7th grade.
Why do you think that?
Well, it was again, you know, I had a little trouble in 1st grade because I was younger. And then I think going from 6th grade into 7th grade was a big adjustment. A lot of the kids were a year older, and that was like a kind of a an adolescent type growth, and maybe I was lagging behind there again.
Yeah.
But mostly, I think I started getting a little more confident as I got like maybe 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th. Yeah.
So do you think that like that time was sort of necessary to get where you are today? Or maybe
that's a good
to
question.
become how you were as a young adult?
Yeah, I think so. I always had a sense of empathy. I mean, like, if people were having problems, I had a little more empathy. I always thought everybody had that, but realized that, later on that really wasn't something that everybody has naturally. I remember when my mom and dad had some financial problems. My dad lost his job when I was in like 10th grade, and they would argue, and one was downstairs and one was upstairs, and they were mad at each other, and I would like run from downstairs to upstairs trying to like, get a compromise or something. And I just had that kind of need to help people, I think, and maybe that was like, I can remember, like, even in high school, there was 2 girls that wanted to be head cheerleaders. And the one was probably the most popular, but not necessarily the best at what she was doing. And the other one was really good at making up cheers and things like that. And it was split down the middle. And somehow or other, I managed to be the deciding vote. And even then there was politics, and I can remember the one that was the most popular, all of a sudden she was like wanting to drive me to school and calling me all the time. And the other one really wasn't, but I felt like she deserved, I knew, like, I was aware that, like, I felt really bad that she wouldn't have some kind of recognition for all the hard work she was doing too. It was really hard, but I voted for her to be the head cheerleader, which made it a tie. So, and we voted 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And I knew everybody else was not going to change their vote. You just knew where the votes were going to go. And even though the other girl was probably a better friend, I voted for, because I felt that this girl, it just seemed like the right thing that she had. So what they ended up doing is have the head cheerleader. We had 2 head cheerleaders, and the one was the head cheerleader for football, and the other was the head cheerleader for basketball and wrestling. And I always, I don't know, I just stuck to that conviction. One girl was pretty mad at me.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that empathy that you have, like, really impacted in your career, like becoming a social worker?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. At first, everybody was either going to be a nurse, or most of my friends were either going to be a nurse or they were going to be teachers. That was kind of like that was kind of it,
Yeah.
And so for me to go into social work was just totally out of everybody's. Most everybody was either a nurse or social worker, or a nurse or a teacher. So I actually originally thought I would be. I wasn't really that good in any particular subject, but one subject that I enjoyed was phys ed. And, like, not that I was that great at it, but I just enjoyed that. So I was actually thinking originally that I would go into phys ed, and my dad took me over to meet a social worker from Lutheran Social Services, and she told me what a social worker did, and I was like, that sounds like something I'd like to do, So that's kind of how I found out about social work. I don't know that I always had this thing, like, I had this doll, and you adopted the doll, and then you gave it, new clothes and things like that.
Oh,
And so
really?
I always had this kind of like,
Oh.
I don't know, just even from
yeah.
a little girl,
Yeah,
had this thing about wanting to help others, you know, and in little ways like that, you know. So yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think oh, hold on, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so you mentioned how like the fact that you became a social worker was like not it's either a teacher or a nurse.
Yeah.
Do you think that made it a little harder, or did that impact the start of your career at all?
It was just kind of almost a relief when I finally realized, okay, this is what I want to do. I mean, because I didn't really think I wanted to be a teacher, and I definitely knew I didn't want to be a nurse. I mean, it would sound like I wanted to be a nurse in the empathy kind of feel, but I didn't like blood, and like, I didn't think I could like fix a wound or give somebody a shot. Like it just didn't seem like I could handle that, you know. So I was like relieved, really,
it just kind of clicked.
Yeah, it was like when her name was Miss Getman, and my dad took me over to meet her, and I was like, and she was so nice, and she told me what they did and what social workers did, and just the different opportunities you could do in social work, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. And it was kind of like, you know, because you're so stressed out about. I don't really want to be an engineer. I don't want to be, you know, my husband, Grandpa, I was probably dating at the time, you know, it was sort of like that for him too, because all his brothers were teachers, and he didn't really want to be a teacher, but somebody mentioned engineering, and he was like, and yeah, that sounds more like what I'd like to do, you know. So it was kind of like, it just kind of hit you. Yeah.
That's nice. Oh no, it turned off. Give me 1 second. Lost my questions. I went over a couple.
Yeah, I probably.
So what was one of the most important lessons you learned growing up? Maybe the lessons you learned the hard way. So like you messed up on something and you're like, oh, okay.
Like when I was really little, maybe? Or
just, I think anytime before you started living on your own as an adult. So even high school, college.
Yeah.
Just something big that sticks out to you.
Okay.
Or maybe a big failure that you overcame.
Okay. Well, I guess one of the biggest failures I overcame was first time I went out for cheerleading. I didn't make it.
When was
I
that?
didn't make the team. I think it was 10th grade.
10th grade.
So all my friends did, but I didn't. And it was disappointing, but I just decided, you know, I was going to work really hard and practice by myself, and just keep, because I knew like in 11th grade, so the girls that were in 11th grade were with the girls that were seniors, you know, and then, so I knew that I'd have another shot at it. So I just kept working really hard and practicing and trying. I didn't give up. And so when I went out, we had tryouts again the next year, then I made the varsity team. Oh, and I actually was on JV. So I was actually with, there was only a couple of us that were older, and then most of them were a year younger. And, you know, I just, I think I learned that, you know, not to give up, and to keep, if you want to do something, to keep trying. Yeah. That was probably a big lesson. Yeah.
So tell me about your wedding. Did it go as planned? Did it not?
Well,
is there anything that sticks out a lot to you?
Yeah. So, my dad had, we had the wedding all planned, and it was like 3 days or something before the wedding, and my father had a detached retina. And in those days, it was a big deal. He had to be taken on his back down to Baltimore where they packed him, so the question was, should we cancel the wedding or should we go ahead with it? And I, at the time, seemed like, you had all these people coming, everything was like in the works, sort of like everything. And he kept saying, whatever you want to do is fine, and I talked to the minister, and the minister's like, I think you should just go ahead with it. Don't worry about it. And we went ahead with it. And I've always kind of felt bad about that. But, that was kind of an unexpected. I talked to a couple people, and Pap didn't care one way or another, whatever you think. But it was kind of like at that point, you felt like everything was like in place. I didn't have I was in a sorority in college, and we had just sort of invited the sorority, invited the fraternity, and there was no way to get, we didn't have cell phones or email. There was no way to get
send out a post and be
like,
oh, it's canceled.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And Joe and I were moving, and everything was like
set up
in line. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just didn't know how to cancel it. So my uncle actually walked me down the aisle, and we taped it for my dad to hear. And my aunt, who lives in Annapolis, they stopped and saw him on the way, and I think he felt bad that he wasn't a part of it. And I've always felt kind of bad too about that. Yeah. So that was a big deal. And my Pap and I had no money, so we got married, and I think we went to the Poconos for like the weekend. That was our big, we were going to live together. We had our house, like a trailer we were going to move into. Both of us had jobs. Neither of us had anywhere else to go. And we didn't know what to do. So, it is what it is. I think hindsight, maybe I would have changed that somehow.
Really? Yeah. So in hindsight, if you went back, would you have tried to cancel it?
I think so. Yeah. We would have probably had to have not been able to let anybody know. I mean, maybe just local people, but maybe we could have had a little. Yeah, I don't know how we would have canceled it, but maybe it would have been a good idea.
To try.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But everybody. Dad was fine, and we got through it, and it wasn't maybe as happy as it would have been otherwise. Yeah. So he was in the hospital quite a while, and that was the other thing. They didn't really know how long it would take, and he had to be on his back so long, so we couldn't really cancel and reschedule. And so that was it.
Yeah. So, so when you became a parent, how did that change your life, if it did? And what lessons have you learned from being a parent?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does definitely change your life. I mean, you are now responsible for somebody else besides yourself, And what was the last part of that question?
What lessons have you learned?
Well, you certainly don't go into being a parent prepared, or you don't take a class and say, okay, now I'm going to be the best parent ever. I always feel like the best thing you can do is just love your kids and do the best you can. It's just not, each time is, each season in their life is just really a learning experience. You just learn as you go, and the only thing you can do is love them and do the best you can. You're going to make mistakes, and each child's different too. Everybody's different, and you think you could be, and I've always struggled with being fair. I want to do one for one. I want to do. It's almost impossible to do that.
Yeah.
Because they're so different, and they have different interests, and you want them to have different interests, and you want them to have different goals in their life and
Mhm.
be different. It's okay to be different, but in being different, it's hard to be totally fair all the
Mhm.
time. Yeah, sometimes you have to treat each child differently.
Was it hard? So I know that my dad, Chris, is 4 years older than Uncle Corey.
Yeah.
Was that hard, the age difference growing up?
Yeah, at the time I felt like I think because I was, at the time I felt like I could not possibly have another child until I probably would have been able to when Chris was 3, but at that point, I had decided to wait, and I was like, okay, now I can handle another one. I was like, and so it got maybe a little bit easier once I knew how to get through the first 4 years, but it made it difficult. I don't think I realized how far apart they were. So, I think it made it difficult for them to, until they were a lot older, to really have, it seemed like they were in different times in their life and interested in different things.
In almost every stage.
Almost every stage, yeah. And until they got so much older. But yeah, I didn't realize that at the time. I think it would be nice to have them closer together. They were almost exactly 4 years apart. So it would have been maybe nicer to have them. I felt like my parents were so far away. Papap's parents were so far away. I had no support system, and I think, I just wasn't sure I could handle. I didn't know if I could handle, kids so close together. But I think you can. You just, your mom did.
Yeah, well, you live so close.
Yeah,
which I'm sure it helped.
Yeah, it probably did. Yeah, you do need some support system in place, and I did not have that. So that made it. When your dad was born, we were actually living in Baltimore, and lived there for a year and a half, and then came up here. And my mother didn't drive, so it wasn't like she would come up and help us out, or could come up and help us out. So yeah, so that it did put everybody far apart. Yeah.
So if you were to see your younger self or meet your younger self again, what piece of advice would you give her? Probably maybe your graduated high school self.
Okay.
Because I can't just say younger self, because obviously it's so different all the time. But probably if you were to see your 18-year-old self when you graduated high school, what would you say to her?
I think not to be see and to, which is a big deal, but to be so serious and to enjoy life maybe a little bit more, to take things as they come a little bit more. I think I was very serious, very focused. Yeah. And to really enjoy. Now I do feel like I really enjoyed my kids. I really did enjoy them in sports. I enjoyed each, I think I really did enjoy that, but I tend to be too serious, tend to not, I tend to get the job done and then have fun. I think you need to mix that up a little bit more than I did. Yeah.
Right. It's very good advice.
Yeah.
So, over the years, have you changed your mind on any major political issues, or have any of your opinions changed over the years? These are really good questions. Well, I think I've gotten more interested. I think of course, when we went to college, that was right around the racial riots. That's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you graduated high school in 1968.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, which was a pretty big year.
Yeah. So, although I didn't participate, I mean, I was such a wuss. And so, I mean, I was so no guts at all, you know. So although I knew it was going on, I wasn't like motivated to march. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I I think my political, I've you know, I've always been more liberal, just because of being a social worker and having that like concern about people that don't have money or aren't on welfare, or
I'm sure working with
foster
people who are in those
foster
situations.
children. I work with adoptions, foster children, and people that have problems, you know, mental health problems and things like that. So I think I've always tended for the liberal, more liberal, more wanting. Again, I have that innate feeling of fairness, you know,
Empathy,
and
fairness,
so that probably hasn't. It just, if anything's got maybe a little bit more pronounced, and during this pandemic, I've actually taken courses on racial. I took a course on how to be an anti-racist, and right now, which was really an interesting course. And then now we're working on. Actually, we did Profiles in Courage with John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, you told me about
that. That was really, really interesting. And now we're working on White Supremacy and Me. So those are really challenging books that I've enjoyed, and kind of makes you like look at yourself and how you can be a better person and how you can speak out. And I've never been extremely good at speaking out, and but you know, try to do that. Yeah.
So do you think, I mean, your opinion hasn't really changed, but you've just become more aware?
Yes.
And more.
Yes, yeah. I think I have become more aware and more. I've always sort of leaned that way, but not that I haven't voted Republican occasionally. But I've leaned more Democrat. And particularly probably the last year or two. Yeah.
Do you think that like growing up around like in the late 60s when you were a teenager had an impact on your life, because they were such a crazy time?
It was, yeah. I mean, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. His brother was assassinated. Martin Luther King was assassinated. There was a lot of civil rights, a lot of yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of my first jobs, well, I worked in Altoona, which is a small town in Pennsylvania. I worked there a short time, like while Pap finished his 5th year in school, and then we moved to Baltimore. So I was like an inner city, definitely a different racial component to that, and so I became much more aware of life in a city than I was growing up. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I have one more question. Who was or is one of the most important people in your life, or who has impacted your life the most, do you think? Maybe not the most, but just a lot.
You mean like a person?
Yeah, like a specific person who you think has just changed your life a lot overall.
Right.
Or maybe just someone that you like didn't know for a while, but like you think about a lot in hindsight, or something like that.
Boy, that's probably my first supervisor in social work, I would say, you know, if it was career oriented, you know, that she was just really an amazing lady, and I think career wise, I think she probably impacted me. You know, from like I met her like in high school, and then
was she the one you
yeah,
took you to meet?
yeah, and then I stayed in touch. And I also did my we called it a practicum, but I did my internship basically with her, and then my first job was with her. So, and then she kind of stayed involved with my career for a while, you know. Other than that, you know, my first thing that came to my mind when you said that was my grandchildren.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I've learned so much from them, you know, and I really, where maybe, you know, I had to parent my sons, maybe I couldn't step back and enjoy them as much as I would have liked to, but I really enjoyed my grandkids, so I really have, and I've learned from them.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you think the role of a grandparent is a lot different for us from the role of a parent?
Yeah, I do. I've decided it is. I mean, I really, well, plus I had boys, so I didn't have girls, so that made a difference. But I also think, you know, you can really enjoy my grandchildren and really appreciate them, you know, and I don't have to do the hard stuff like parenting, you know, I can just go, wow, they're just terrific. I mean, they're perfect. What do they need to change for? You know? So, you know, I just admire them and you, and I admire, you know, you're just such a sweet person, and you're smart, and you know, you've got so many strengths, you know, and I think that's great. I just love it. I can't wait to see what you're gonna do. You know?
Thank you so much. Okay, well, thank you for letting me interview you.
Yeah, sure.
Very
Glad
nice.
to do it. It was fun.